If you've got an idea for an app and you're thinking about building it, you've probably seen that there are about 1 million different AI tools out there to use. And so today I want to take you through my definitive tier list of all of the best AI tools to start building your app today so that you can turn your idea into a reality and launch your idea to the world. If you don't know me, my name is Chris, and for the last 15 years I've been designing apps and advising startups on product and design, and I believe the next wave of incredible businesses is going to be built using these AI tools. And so let's dive straight into the tier list of the top AI app building tools that you can use today.
Build great products. Build great products.
So if you wanted to build your AI app basically 6 months ago, you would have like 1 or 2 different options. It's pretty much just Lovable or Bolt.new. But 6 months later, here we are, and we've got so many different tools to build AI apps with, and so it can be hard to know exactly the best place to start, depending on what type of app that you want to build. A lot of people get started with Lovable or Bolt, and then sometimes you can realize that maybe it's not the best platform to build your app in. You have to sync your code to GitHub, get it out, you try using a different tool, or maybe you find that actually using like an all-in-one platform might be better. And so what I want to do today is I'm going to take you through all of these AI app building tools here. And then I'm going to categorize them by the best for all of these different categories, basically enterprise apps, consumer apps, complex apps, native apps, best for design, and best for like internal or personal apps. And then I'm going to put them on the tier list. Actually, first I'm going to put them on the tier list over here so you can see which tools are good, which tools are bad, and then look at which tools you might want to use depending on the type of app that you want to build. And I'll talk more about those in detail as well. So to start off with, let's just go through this tier list and get this done so we can actually rank and rate all of these AI app building tools for you right here based on my experience with all of these platforms. I've tried all of these platforms in multiple different ways to actually build apps, and so I have a pretty good idea of like what tools are actually good here and what tools aren't so good. And so to start off with, let's go with Replit. So Replit is like an all-in-one app building platform that includes a bunch of stuff out of the box. Their agent is really, really powerful. I really love the interface of Replit and how it kind of helps you use the agent or like these different tools to actually build your app. It has a database built in, it has authentication built in, and it's actually a really well-rounded tool, and it has a ton of features that you can use out of the box to get your app built. I think Replit is such a great option for like building internal apps or personal apps or like something to use like inside your own company, because it has all of that stuff kind of like built out of the box and you can just build it in that platform. But it also allows you like a lot more detailed control over stuff as well, which some of the app building tools here don't actually give you that much control. So I am going to put Replit into this A tier because I think it's really good. I really like Replit. It's where I started my AI app building journey. I first started using Replit to start off with, and I think they do a super good job of making it really accessible for non-technical founders. And I really like the way that the agent recommends stuff as you go as well. Now you can get a bit carried away with this. It's like shiny object syndrome. You just want to like build the next thing and like do whatever Replit says. So sometimes you have to like keep it under control a little bit. But Replit generally is very, very good. It's also very good at like actually building the stuff as well. Its agent is very, very powerful. Next, we've got Base44. Base44 is another all-in-one platform. Base44 was built about 6 months ago. Then it was acquired recently by Wix for $80 million to kind of get them into this AI app building space. Base44 is an all-in-one platform. I liked Base44 when I used it, but I felt that it was lacking in a lot of areas that Replit was able to cover basically, and it felt a little bit unpolished to me. Like some of the UI elements weren't quite there. The experience with actually building using the agent felt a little bit hit and miss. So sometimes I would get really good results, sometimes I would get less good results. And so for me, I probably wouldn't use Base44 unless I was building something very specific for internal or personal use. And I think for that personal use case, it can be quite good. And maybe to get started, it doesn't have a ton of detailed controls in there as well for all of the different parts of the built-in functionality that Base44 offers. But it is a fairly young platform that hasn't been around for very long. And so I'm sure they're going to fix all of these issues over time. And it's a good starting point if you're just trying to get started with AI app building, but I wouldn't recommend it for consumer apps or for anything where you like actually want to put it out there, get users and actually make some money. For me, I'm going to put Base 44 into this C category because it's not a tool that I would use particularly, but it definitely is right for some people. And I'm sure they're going to improve their agent ability over time as well. Next here we've got Cursor. Cursor is more of the technical app building tool, and this falls more into like an AI IDE, which is basically like an AI code editor. So you can obviously build apps and anything in code using an AI code editor like Cursor, and there are other options on the market like Windsurf, which I haven't got in here because it's not explicitly an AI app builder, but what I did want to include was just Cursor here, just because it is a tool that lots of people talk about and use, and so you kind of get that question when you're thinking about building your app. You think, should I use Cursor? Should I learn something a bit more technical? And I think Cursor is incredibly powerful. It's good at doing so many things, but it is definitely for the more technically minded. So I'm going to I think Cursor is up in this S tier because of how flexible and how powerful it is. You can run any coding agent in the terminal. It gives you really direct control over your code base. They've just recently released BugBot as well, which allows you to review and fix any changes in your code, any bugs or issues in your code as you go. It is $40 a month, so it is a bit expensive, but I think Cursor is a great option if you're more technically minded and you want to kind of build everything from scratch. And also Cursor is flexible for like any type of app that you want to build as well. You just have to be really explicit and know exactly what you want to build before you go and build it a lot of the time, because it can be difficult to know exactly what you need to do if you're just working with code. And also there is a bit of a barrier to entry there of like setting up a local environment and viewing that in a local environment. I'm actually going to move this down to A, because I think there are some drawbacks if you're non-technically minded, but I really love Cursor. I think it's a great option if you're building more complex apps or you want very detailed control over your code base as a code editor. Next up we have Lovable, and Lovable is not an all-in-one code builder. Lovable is basically more of a front-end app builder. And so what do I mean by front-end? Well, front-end is basically the visual and the UI stuff. So everything you see basically on the page. So it's like your buttons, your text boxes, all of that stuff. Now it can build back-end functionality as part of what app that you're building, but for most of the stuff that you're building with Lovable, you're going to be using a separate tool to actually do the back-end stuff. Something like Supabase, which it integrates really easily with out of the box, is really, really good, and it's super easy to set that up, but you do need to take that jump of like hooking up Supabase, hooking up an external payment provider like Stripe or Polar into your app using Lovable. Lovable, it has a very, very powerful agent as well, and I think despite the fact that Lovable kind of looks like all of the other AI coding tools, where it basically is like a text box and you prompt it and then you speak to it in the chat, the actual AI agent that Lovable has built to code your app is probably one of the most accurate out there of all of these tools. It is very, very, very good at building exactly what you ask it to build. And so I know a lot of people love Lovable and a lot of people enjoy working with it. I think it's a really great tool. Quick break in the episode to talk about my community for people who are building apps with AI and want to actually launch their app and get real customers. It's called the AI App Builders Academy. So if you're building an AI app with Bolt or Lovable or Cursor or any of these AI tools, and you actually want to make a profit and launch your app, then this is the community for you. Inside, you'll get access to a community of other builders, as well as my 30-day app course, helping you go from idea to app to a profitable launch in just 30 days. You'll also get access to weekly calls with live workshops and training, as well as all of my startup frameworks and resources, and 24/7 support from the community to help you answer any questions or problems you're having with building and launching your AI app. So if you're building an app with AI and you actually want to make a profit and launch your app, then head over to school.com/AI apps to find out more. I'll see you there. So I'm going to put Lovable in this S tier just because it is so user friendly and so easy to get started with, and it has all of the tools in there to integrate with, almost like as a one-click integration. You just click to integrate Supabase, you click to set up to sync with GitHub, you can sync it with GitHub, work on your code base separately and come back to Lovable and it will actually update that with you. They're building a bunch of new features in here. Their agent is really, really powerful, and so if you're just getting started building with apps, I think Lovable is a really great starting point, and it's one of the best tools I think for allowing that flexibility of being able to go back and forth between different platforms. Next we have Bolt.new, and I think Bolt.new fits into the same category as Lovable, where it's this flexible, more front-end focused app builder, and it gives you integrations to Supabase and GitHub like out of the box. But I would say that the actual build quality of Bolt, I would say, is not as good as Lovable. For me personally, from my experience, I really enjoyed building with Bolt during the Bolt hackathon, but there are some stuff where it does fall back slightly. Some of the integrations don't work as nicely as they do with Lovable, for Supabase primarily and for other tools, and so I'm going to put Bolt down here in this A tier. I really like Bolt. I think Bolt is a really good and powerful tool, and Bolt is really going to be following in this same category as Lovable, but they're close behind them in second place. The next tier I've got is Orchids. Now Orchids is a more specifically design tailored front-end AI app building tool. So they do just the front end. They're building integrations with tools like Supabase and other third-party tools, but they haven't quite got there yet. They're very new to the market, just out of one of the latest Y Combinator batches. The design that you will get using Orchids is generally quite a lot better than what you would get in something like Bolt, just by typing a prompt. But if you're using a screenshot or you're actually giving Bolt or Lovable some guidance as to the design you want, you can get fairly comparable design anyway. You just really need to know kind of like how to prompt it. And so I'm going to put Orchids down here in this B tier because it does lack some of the features that these other front-end specific platforms have, although the design quality is actually better than them in a lot of instances. Next, we've got a platform which you might not have heard of called Leap. Now, Leap is built by a Swedish company called Encore, which basically have like a deployment and back-end infrastructure platform where you can deploy apps to the cloud, and it gives you all the stats on all the back-end stuff and all the deployment stuff. I'm not like super technical with this, so it's similar in that way to a tool like Render, which basically allows you to deploy your app to the cloud and gives you a more solid infrastructure. Leap is their AI app building tool, and Leap is basically in this more like hybrid space between a more complex and technical code editor, which has a bunch of stuff built in like database and authentication, integrates really well with third-party services like Polar for payments. They kind of do that straight out of the box really easily. And I actually had a demo with Leap with one of the product managers there, and we managed to build like an AI agent with a chat interface in just a few prompts, basically using the OpenAI SDK, and it all worked. It referenced the context, it had memory, it was super powerful just from the prompts. I think Leap has one of the most accurate prompts to app building workflows that I've seen and used. Very similar to Lovable, and I would highly recommend Leap for more like enterprise, commercial and full stack applications over something like a Lovable or Bolt. And I really enjoyed using Leap. I think this is one of the best tools on the market for building apps right now, and so if you're okay with a little bit more technical overhead, with learning a little bit more technical stuff, then I would hugely recommend Leap. And I'm actually going to put Leap into this S category at the top here, because I was super impressed with the platform and how it works. Now, the next tool that we've got on the list here is Devin, and Devin is much more designed for enterprise and team-based development coding workflows. So if you're building an app from scratch, I wouldn't necessarily recommend Devin. It's also quite expensive compared to other tools, but if you are working on a team, you have multiple developers, you do want to integrate AI coding as part of your workflow, then Devin is a really good option. It does like a huge amount of documentation behind the scenes, maps out your architecture, it connects directly to Linear, so you can connect it to issues and features that you're building and documenting through Linear. You can assign assign tasks from linear to Devin, which is super powerful if you're working in a team where you need to track and have visibility of all of these bugs and features and tasks over the entire team. And you can start and run multiple Devins kind of like working alongside each other in the background. They'll all reference the same documentation, and you can search a bunch of stuff within all your documentation. It's just a really, really thorough and well-built platform for enterprise vibe coding, and I would hugely recommend this if you're building on a team or you're building in an organization and wanted to get started vibe coding. And so I'm going to put Devin into this A tier because I think Devin is an incredibly powerful platform for more like enterprise and organization AI focused AI coding. The next tool that we have here is Mocha, and Mocha is another all-in-one app building tool. They've spent the last couple of years building this and launched recently. They're our Y Combinator backed startup, and they are more in the kind of Lovable and Bolt style space, but with a few of the other integrations built out of the box. So you have things like authentication and database and all of that stuff all built into the platform, very similar to what you would get with Base 44. I think Mocha is a slightly better tool, slightly more accurate than something like Base 44, and so I'm going to put Mocha in this B tier. I do think there's a lot of areas that Mocha can improve, and it is a very straightforward app for a very singular purpose at the moment, I think, where it's more for like front-end consumer-facing apps, or it's more for like internal or personal use to build apps. But they are building something very, very good over there, and I do think the team is going in the right direction. Next, I want to talk about Emergent. Now, Emergent is, again, one of these all-in-one platforms, but it's an all-in-one platform that is more in line with Leap, in that it's for more technically minded founders. It connects directly to GitHub. It actually will test all of the functionality as it's building it as well. So it's one of the only platforms here that actually does like a bit more thorough testing and security checks as it's building, and you can see this in the workflow as you're kind of building your app, that it's doing these checks, that it's doing these tests. Again, I used it to build an AI agent super quickly, similar to Leap. I actually think it's a very good platform. I don't think the UI or the experience is the same quality as you would get in Leap, but I do think it's a very solid, technically minded platform with a very, very good, a very, very strong foundation. I don't think it's as good as some of the tools in this A category, so I'm going to put Emergent down here in this B category, but it is a really, really good option if you don't get along with something like Leap and you are looking for more of a technical full stack app building application. Next here we've got Polymat, which is a design focused vibe coding tool and is more used for design teams and product teams in organizations to help them prototype ideas, build full user journeys and user flows. I reviewed Polymat as my first ever video on this channel and was pretty impressed, but also found that there is a lot of missing areas in the tool. Now they have just released their agent mode in the tool, so it now builds stuff using an AI agent coding workflow similar to what Lovable have done, but Polymat is much more for like product designers, product teams. It has a very, very specific focus. I'm going to put Polymat in this A tier because I think Polymat is a great platform for that very specific use case. It really tailors to like team-based product design workflows really, really well and helps bridge that gap between product design and product management and development. And I think it's just helped a ton of product managers and product designers actually prototype really, really strong user journeys and user flows in that platform. And I know they're building a lot of features that align specifically with that use case in the future rather than following the trends of all of these other tools. And so they have a really clear vision for what they want to build. It's another Y Combinator backed startup that is building a similar platform here. So great option for design or product management if you're doing prototypes or building on a team inside a company. But if you're building consumer apps, if you're building like a native iOS app, if you're building just a personal app that you want to use for yourself, Polymat probably isn't the best option. Now going on to the last tools that we have here, we've got Tempo, which is a more design focused front end app, but they are building Superbase integration, direct polar integration, and actually I was super, super impressed with all of the functionality that Tempo has out of the box. You get a PRD and an architecture and like an architecture map when you start off your project, so it outlines your entire app. It can build directly from Figma. similar to a lot of the other design focused tools here like Polymat. It gives you access to the code base. There are those integrations that they're building right out of the box. You can see all of the screens on a canvas similar to Polymat from your app and edit them directly. I was hugely impressed with Tempo, and I do think there is still like some way to go there in the quality of the prompts to kind of what it's actually building, but I think Tempo fits really, really well. I think they've got a super strong tool which is kind of going under the radar at the moment, but really, really works. I can see this tool really, really working super well for like if you're design minded and you want to build the front end and the basic functionality for your app to start, or you're a designer and you want to actually bring in your code base, which you can do on the tool. You can bring in your code base and you can start designing in it, and then you can push the code back to GitHub. I think there's a huge amount of value in this platform. I'm actually going to put Tempo for this specific use case. I'm going to put Tempo into the S tier here because I think it's a great platform for that use case. Next up we have Aura, which is a little bit hidden here. Aura is has gone through so many different iterations. I had a video where I reviewed Aura about a few months ago, and it actually looks like a completely different app now. But Aura has a massive library. Again, this is a more design focused tool. Aura as a massive library of all of these design templates, all of these component templates. It's great for prototyping components and UI, and it's great for building more front end specific designs. But I think they're still like not quite they still haven't quite exactly connected to what the use case is that they're targeting there. What problem are they directly solving for users? And I think it's incredibly powerful for designers to use a tool like Aura. But I think outside of that, there's not many people who will find a benefit from using Aura. If you want to build an app, if you want to build a consumer app, a native app, even an internal or a personal use app, I think this is much more design specific. And so I'm actually going to put Aura down here in this B tier because I think it's a great platform, but it does have that like just very, very super specific use case that is only going to be relevant for a certain amount of people. Next we have Rork, which is a native iOS app builder. And I think Rork it has a very, very clear use case. Native apps in AI app building tools is not something that has been done particularly well yet. You've got a bunch of different options out there. You've got Vibe Code, which has been built by Riley Brown. I'll actually add that on here as well. You've got Rork, which is more like Lovable, but for native apps in your browser where you can build and then publish to the App Store. I do think that's a good workflow. So I do think that Rork has a stronger native app build to publish workflow than something like Vibe Code does, where Vibe Code is really still figuring out like what is the use case that it solves specifically. And so but the platform in Rork is still, there's a lot more things that you have to consider when you're building an iOS or an Android app, and I think we're just not quite there. We're still a bit behind compared to some of these other web app building tools when it comes to building native apps. And actually Emergent is just about to release a pro version of their tool, which allows you to build native apps in platform as well. So if you are building native apps, then Rork is a good one to try. But I would say that you probably will have to take that code out of Rork at some point and then put it into like a Cursor or an Xcode, which is a much more technical tool to actually finish building your app and publishing it directly to the App Store. So I'm going to put Rork for now. I'm going to put Rork for now in this C tier alongside Base 44 because there's still a way to go to get that platform up to the point where you can build more in-depth apps for iOS and Android and actually get something really decent into the App Store. But they are on the right path to developing that tool, so I think they're going in the right direction, as with all of these other tools are as well. Next we got V0, which is very much in this prototyping tool category, but I really love V0 for like getting something really decent in one prompt or in a few prompts. It's really, really good to like quickly prototype ideas and see what something will look like, and it's very much just front end. So they're like a very clear, so they're not really like a full app building tool, but it is good to like prototype something to see if it will work, and it gets that first prompt like very, very strong. It gets it like very close to what you were looking for. I've put in a lot of complex prompts into V0 and it's one-shot them more often than not, which is very, very surprising to me. So the actual model that they're using for prompts to code and design is really, really strong. I'm going to put V0 into this A tier because what it does incredibly well, and a ton of people using get great value out of it. And you can take the code out from here really easily and put it into any other tool. And then last I've got Vibecode, which is a native iOS only app building tool. And I think Vibecode has a huge amount of potential in that you can build native apps directly on your phone using natural language and using your voice. But what it doesn't have yet is a clear vision for what it's trying to achieve. It doesn't really know yet if it's a tool to help more technical people actually publish comprehensive apps into the iOS App Store, or if it's a tool to just help people build like personal apps on their own phone. And I think those are two like really clear problems that could be solved by this. But at the moment it's kind of straddling those two worlds where it doesn't quite work for either of them. And so I'm going to say like Vibecode has a lot of potential, but for now I'm going to put it down here in this C category. And so now we've got our tier list, we've got our S tier apps here, we've got Lovable, Leap and Tempo. I'm tempted to like put Cursor up here as well, and I'm just going to like move this because I feel like it sits like a little bit between the two, because Cursor is super powerful and I use Cursor all the time for a bunch of different stuff, and it actually is just like a really good fallback for like if you can't build stuff in any of these tools and you want to get your code, put your code back into GitHub, take it out, put it into Cursor, build something, and then put it back and go back into any of these tools again. And so let's actually go into all of the categories over here and see which one works best for what type of use. So if you have an idea for an app that's really, really specific or falls into any of these categories, and we're going to go through them, it's going to be basically internal or personal apps, which is more for like if I want to build like a productivity tracker just for me based on my way of working, like on my desktop I can use whilst I'm working, or an internal app which would be to like automate or like make a workflow that I'm doing as part of my company or for my business easier, that I can use in my team or to help track my team or like that, any of that sort of stuff. That's what internal or personal apps means. We've got front-end consumer apps and full-stack consumer apps. So front-end consumer apps is more just like simple front-end basic apps that have like a simple database, simple authentication, no crazy like back-end functionality, but are more like front-end focused apps. And then full-stack consumer apps would be like apps that have a more full-stack like functionality, so more like complex back-end functionality which you actually want to have a bit more fine control over. Say you're building an app which has like an AI agent chat in it, or some more in-depth features, or a lot of different features that plug into like a more complicated database schema. That's where I would use something that like falls into this full stack consumer app category. And consumer just means that it's something that a customer is going to pay for to use that app. It's not for like a business. So full stack apps is just really where you want a bit more complex functionality in your app, and you want to have a bit more control over the back end and what's going on there. Enterprise apps is more where you're building for enterprise, you're building where you need more security, more documentation, basically like a stronger and more secure platform. I'm going to change this actually to be like more best for simple consumer apps and best for complex consumer apps, because I think that's a better way of describing it basically, rather than full stack or front end. And then we've got best for native apps and best for design. So native apps is just anything that's going on the iOS or Android store where you're building directly for mobile. And best for design is really where you're either a designer using a vibe coding tool, or you're getting the best kind of design output from this tool, or it's very design focused in terms of like improving the design of your app, or doing something with like a design specific mindset. And so let's go through each of these so you can know exactly what tool you need to use depending on the type of app that you're building. So best for internal and personal apps, I think the best platform for this is Replit. Replit gives you a huge amount of control. Their agent is really, really powerful. They're building a tool where their mission is to help non-technical people build great apps and build all of these things into their platform without having to need all these third-party integrations. And I think it's the most well-rounded and mature tool to use. And by mature, I just mean the user experience of that is super good, and they've been building this product for a while. And they've really created something that's really robust and really strong to use for this use case. Best for simple consumer apps, I think Lovable is the one to go with here. Lovable is great for getting something up and running really quickly. It's really accurate. It connects into all of these third-party tools. You can integrate your database, authentication, GitHub really, really easily. It will connect with Polar or Stripe. You just have to prompt it in the chat to connect with those tools. And it gives you the most flexibility for moving into different tools in the future if you do want to take that outside of Lovable and go somewhere else. Best for enterprise apps, I think the best one for enterprise apps at the moment here is Devin. That gives you the most control over how your agents are coding. It gives you connectivity directly to Linear, so you can assign Devin to do actual issues and bugs and features that you are documenting in Linear, and it gives you the most amount of documentation and research and in-depth kind of thinking before it actually builds anything in your code base, and it writes detailed reports and helps you do all of this really, really securely as well. And it also just is the best platform for collaborating across multiple developers within a team or across multiple teams. And so I think Devin is the best for enterprise. For complex consumer apps, I would recommend Leap. Leap is my favorite tool for more complex consumer apps. It allows you to deploy to the AWS cloud or the Google cloud. Agent is incredibly powerful in Leap, and there's a ton of more technically focused features. If you're building a more complicated full stack consumer app, I really like Leap. Leap also works really well for teams, but I think Devin just pips them there in terms of features. But Leap is really, really good for like teams and enterprise use as well. Best for native apps, I would say at the moment, it's really difficult on this. I think at the moment Cursor is still the best for native apps. I would do something like setting up, basically set up a new project in Xcode if you're building an iOS app, and then open that project in Cursor, and then use something like Claude Code or the Cursor agent to build your project in Swift, and then actually see the preview in Xcode rather than using any of the tools out there that are more like vibe coding tools for native apps at the moment. I just don't think anything is quite there yet in terms of giving you enough control and detail over the app that you're building to actually create something that could like legitimately scale into a full company. I still think you need to do that in Cursor or another AI IDE basically right now. And best for design, I think best for design for me at the moment is Tempo, with Polymat in a very, very close second. Tempo has so many features that are great for design, including like outlining product requirements, the PRD, allowing you to click and edit directly on the code. It has the panel on the right for all of the properties that you can edit kind of based on the elements on the page. It maps out all of the screens on a canvas for you, and it's building in integration into Supabase. You can Supabase and Polar and other stuff for all of these other features, and you can also import a GitHub repository straight into it and then start designing in your repository and push that back to GitHub as well, which makes it a super strong option for designers. But again, I think Polymat here is a really close second. They have a ton of really, really good features over at Polymat that they're building as well, and really kind of tailored toward that product design and product management specific role. But for me, like Tempo is probably the best option out there right now. So that is my tier list, and that is my list of all of the best kind of AI app building tools for each of these different types of apps. If you are building an AI app, I'd love to learn more about what you're building in the comments down below. So just let me know what tool you're using, what you're struggling with, anything like that. I'm happy to answer any questions. And with that said, let's get into my final thoughts here and wrap things up. So that was my tier list for the top AI tools that you should be using today to build your AI app. And I've also broken it down there by the category of app that you're building as well. So hopefully you can choose the right tool dependent on the type of app that you want to build and get started with a platform that's actually going to take you through to being able to launch your app and getting real customers. If you've used any other tool that I haven't covered on this video, I'd love to learn more. And if you think I've got any of this wrong or right, just leave comments down below and just let me know what you think. If you enjoyed this video, then don't forget to like and subscribe. And as always, you can join my community over at school.com/AI apps if you are building an app and you do want to launch it and get real paying customers. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.
Build great product. Build great product.